I never used to believe in contagion of the mind. Viruses, yes. Bacteria, sure. But the idea that a thought could spread like a parasite, worming its way from one skull to another? No. That was until I met inmate 3021. If you're reading this, it means I broke protocol. But some protocols are made to be broken, especially when they start bleeding into your dreams. When I took the job at Redwood Penitentiary, I wasn't looking for meaning. I needed isolation, quiet, somewhere to rebuild myself after what happened in Chicago. Night shift psychologist, 1 inmate per hour, doors sealed from the outside, no direct contact, sessions through bulletproof glass and audio feed only. It was perfect. 3021 didn't speak for the first 2 sessions, just sat there, staring at the mirrored wall, not at the camera, not at me. 3rd session, he leaned forward and said, "You're hiding in a place that already knows your name." That was the first time I felt the temperature drop in the control room. I checked the logs. 3021 had been inside for 7 years, no visitors, no media access, no contact. So how did he know I was trying to disappear? How did he know about the name change? He looked up again in our 4th session, speaking directly into the mic. 333, you'll start hearing it too. I didn't know what he meant then, but that night, when I was drifting into sleep, I heard the buzz of my security pager go off. Time, 3:33 a.m. No messages, no alerts, just static. I requested his file. Denied. Need to know only, Warden Harris said. Just document your sessions and keep things clean. Clean? There was nothing clean about the way 3021 watched me. Like he was listening to thoughts before I said them. The guards started acting strange around his cell block, avoiding eye contact, taking longer to complete routine checks. One even transferred wings midweek. "The guy gives me migraines," he mumbled when I asked. 3rd week in, I noticed the mirror in my office had a small crack at the bottom, hairline thin. I hadn't seen it before. When I leaned closer, the fluorescent light flickered, not overhead, in the mirror. It flickered twice, and then my reflection didn't. I ran audio diagnostics, nothing. But when I replayed the session tape from earlier that day, there was a low hum under 3021's breathing. At first, I thought it was electrical interference, until I ran it through a frequency analyzer. It hit exactly 3.33 hertz. A week later, a guard went missing, found 3 days later inside the unused solitary wing. No cameras had captured him going in. He was curled up in the fetal position, whispering, "Don't let the time see you." 3021 smiled during our next session. It was the first time he'd done anything resembling human emotion. "You're starting to hear it," he said. "That means it knows your voice now." Sleep deprivation became normal. Every time I managed to drift off, I'd wake up at exactly 3:33 a.m. Always with the sound of breathing in the room. But the monitors were clear. I submitted a formal request to transfer 3021 to a daytime therapist. Denied again. "You were chosen for a reason," Harris said. That sentence stuck with me. Chosen, not assigned. My sessions with 3021 grew darker. He started asking questions about me. "Have you told anyone what you did before here? Do they know about the fire? Do you think it forgave you?" I hadn't spoken of the fire in 10 years. How could he know? I burned those files. I buried that part of my life. I checked the staff database. There was no record of who admitted 3021, no intake forms, no psychologist reports. His earliest record was a note on a log entry, transferred from facility null/null. I confronted Harris. He stared at me for a long time and said, "There is no 3021. I played back the last 3 session tapes. No video, just blank footage. Yet I remember sitting there, hearing his voice. Reviewing my notes, I realized my handwriting was starting to change. Slanted, smaller, more compact, like his. I began dreaming of a corridor that never ended, always dimly lit, walls pulsating like skin. At the end, a door marked 3021. Every time I reached for the handle, I'd hear my mother calling from behind the door. She died in 2004. I began recording my own voice before sleep, hoping to catch something. One night, I did. A whisper, under my breath. We're already inside. I stopped talking to people. Staff began to avoid me. One nurse dropped her coffee when she passed me in the hall. "I thought you were someone else," she said, pale and trembling. I went back to 3021 cell, empty. The bed was still made, dusty, no recent entry logs, as if he hadn't been there in weeks. But the room smelled like something warm and rotting. On the wall, etched in small lines, "We remember what you forgot." I called my sister. She said I already called her 2 nights ago. I hadn't. She played the voicemail. It was my voice, but the words weren't mine. "He's inside the glass now. Don't look too long." I smashed every reflective surface in my apartment, covered everything with towels. But still, every night at 3:33, I feel the room dim slightly, like something holding its breath. I returned to the prison after 3 days of leave. My ID no longer scanned. Security said I hadn't worked there in over a month. My car was gone from the staff lot. My name wasn't in the system. I broke in through the rear gate during a power outage, went straight to the therapy wing. The room I used, my office, was sealed. But I saw inside. There was a man sitting in my chair, looking into the mirror. It was me, or someone shaped like me. Then the intercom crackled to life. A whisper, not a sentence, just a time. 3:33. I backed away from the window, heart pounding like fists on steel. The version of me in the chair didn't move, didn't breathe. It just stared forward, as if waiting for something behind the mirror to answer. I felt the temperature drop again, a familiar sensation now, like walking into a room where someone had just whispered your name. I turned to leave, but the lights overhead flickered, and the hallway stretched longer than it should have. Redwood's corridors were always tight and metallic. This one felt soft, blurred at the edges, as if it were growing in real time. A guard rounded the corner, scanning the dark with his flashlight. I recognized him, Carter, young, jittery, always tapping his fingers. But now he looked hollowed out. When the beam hit me, he froze. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. "They said you were taken." "Taken where?" I asked. He shook his head violently. "I didn't say that. I didn't say anything." I followed him toward the exit. But before we reached the stairwell, a siren blared through the intercom. Not the usual alert tone. This one pulsed 3 times, paused, then pulsed 3 more. Carter's eyes widened. "He's awake again," he said. "Block E is responding." I didn't know what that meant, but I felt it. A pressure, like something pushing through the walls, straining to take form. The intercom crackled. A whisper threaded through the static. "You forgot your seat." Carter turned to run. He didn't get far. The lights snapped off, and in the pitch black, I heard a single sharp exhale, like someone sucking all the air out of the room. When the emergency lights flickered back on, Carter was gone. No footsteps, no movement, just his flashlight on the floor, still warm to the touch. I forced myself down the stairwell, each step echoing like it belonged to someone else. I didn't know where to go. I wasn't an employee anymore, according to Redwood's system. I wasn't supposed to exist here. But then where had I gone? What version of me was the prison keeping? The lower floors were almost entirely unlit. My breath formed clouds as the temperature continued to drop. In the dark, I heard tapping, soft, deliberate. Morse code? I leaned toward the sound. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap, tap. But it wasn't coming from a cell. It was coming from the vents. Something. Crawling. No. Moving with intention. Someone. I reached the old records room. My ID shouldn't have worked, but the door clicked open. Inside, file cabinets stretched farther than the wall should allow, like the room had swallowed an entire wing of the prison. I searched for 3021's folder again, and again, and again. Rows and rows, repeating endlessly. Many drawers labeled blank, as if waiting for names that hadn't been written yet. Finally, after what felt like hours, I found a thin, dust-covered file with no name, only a time, 3:33. Inside was a single photograph, not of 3021, but of me, younger, standing outside a building I didn't recognize. On the back, "You came before the voice did." My hand shook. I flipped the picture over and nearly dropped it. Behind me in the photo, barely visible in the reflection of the glass door, was a second me, smiling. A breath brushed the back of my neck, warm, too human. "You kept trying to leave," a voice murmured. My voice, but not from my mouth. I spun around. No one there. But my shadow didn't match my movement. It stayed a fraction behind, lagging like a bad video feed. When it finally caught up, I felt dizzy, as if I'd slipped out of myself for a second. Something was rewriting me. I needed air. I burst through the records room door and stumbled into Block C. Empty cells lined each side, except one at the very end. Cell 3021. Impossible. This was the wrong wing. 3021 was never housed here. But the number was burned into the door in jagged black strokes. Against every instinct, I approached. The closer I got, the louder the hum became, low, vibrating through my teeth, syncing with my pulse. The door wasn't locked. It drifted open as if pushed from the inside. Inside the cell was a bed, neatly made, a pair of shoes under it, a metal table, all completely normal, except for the mirror. It wasn't supposed to be there. Prison cells don't have mirrors this large. It covered the entire wall, and in its reflection, the cell was full. Shadows sitting on the bed, shadows pacing, shadows whispering in congregations. But in reality, there was nothing. I stepped closer. In the reflection, one of the shadows stopped pacing and turned toward me. Slowly, deliberately. Its head tilted, exactly the way 3021 used to tilt his head. Then it smiled, and the mirror cracked, not outward, inward, like something behind it had breathed in. The crack spread across the mirror in branching patterns, lines converging toward the center like veins. My heartbeat synced with each fracture. I reached out a trembling hand, and the surface rippled as if made of water. My reflection, or what was left of it, leaned closer from the other side. It whispered something I couldn't hear. Then I heard footsteps behind me, heavy, slow. I turned. At the cell entrance stood a man in an orange jumpsuit, head shaved, hands hanging limp at his sides. Expression blank, almost serene. It was 3021, alive, solid, real. But something was wrong. His shadow stretched the wrong way, bending toward mine, reaching for it. "You weren't supposed to see this room yet," he said, in a voice that didn't belong to him. "But you kept coming back." "I never came here before," I said. He smiled gently, almost with pity. "You came here first." He stepped aside, revealing the corridor behind him. Except it wasn't the prison anymore. It was the endless hallway from my dreams, pulsing soft like breath. The walls shimmered as if they were made of thin skin. Doors lined each side, all labeled with numbers I recognized. Old addresses, years of trauma, rooms I tried to forget. "You divided yourself many times," 3021 murmured. "We just helped you collect the pieces." The hum peaked. The mirror behind me shattered inward. A deafening suction pulled at my clothes, dragging me backward toward the broken mirror. The glass wasn't on the floor. It was floating mid-air, suspended like shards caught in thick syrup. Each piece reflected a different version of me. Older, younger, injured, smiling, screaming, dying. all of them reaching back. I fought against the pull, grabbing the edge of the bed frame. Metal groaned under my grip. 3021 watched calmly. You hear it now, don't you? The moment when the world blinks. And I did. A faint ticking behind the hum. Slow at first, then faster, like a clock winding into place. Tick, 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 tick. Then everything stopped. A single tone rang across the cell block. 333. The force yanked me off the bed frame. My fingers scraped metal, tearing skin as I was pulled backward. I slammed into the mirror surface, except it didn't cut me. It swallowed. Cold, thick, silent. My last glimpse before going under was 3021 placing his hand against the wall, whispering, "You'll remember the rest soon." Then darkness closed in, and I wasn't sure anymore which side of the glass I had come from. I don't remember landing. I don't remember breathing. I don't remember choosing to open my eyes. It was like waking up before my body did, drifting in a space where thoughts echoed a second before I had them. When vision finally returned, I was lying on cold concrete. A single fluorescent light flickered overhead, humming in an irregular rhythm. My head throbbed with a pressure that felt like someone pushing their thumbs into my temples from the inside. I sat up slowly. I wasn't in Redwood anymore, not exactly. The walls looked like the prison, but distorted, as if someone had reassembled the building from memory, missing pieces, filling in the gaps with whatever they imagined should be there. The cells were too narrow, the bars too thick, the ceiling too low. It felt like being inside a sketch of the real place, drawn by a trembling hand. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from recognition. I'd been here before. Footsteps echoed down the hall, soft, steady, synchronized with the flicker of the light. I pressed myself against the wall. Someone rounded the corner. Not a guard, not 3021. It was me, walking with slow, deliberate steps, eyes blank, mouth slightly open as if whispering words I couldn't hear. I stared at him, at me, and he stopped walking. His head snapped toward me with a jerk that shouldn't be possible. The fluorescent light above us went out, not flickered, died. In the sudden dark, he whispered, "We need all of you this time." When the light came back on, the corridor was empty. My breath made fog in the air. At first, I thought I was cold, but then I realized the fog wasn't rising from my mouth. It was seeping from the walls themselves, thin streams of vapor like the concrete was exhaling. Alarms started blaring somewhere in the distance, long, drawn-out tones, warped like they were underwater. I moved down the corridor, each step echoing twice, once from my feet and once from something following just behind. I approached a junction where two hallways split. On the floor, scratched into the concrete by fingernails or something sharper, were the words, "Follow yourself." I didn't want to understand what that meant, but I did. This place wasn't letting me leave until I confronted whatever version of me it had taken first. I turned left. As I moved deeper, the hallway began to tilt, just a few degrees, but enough to make me dizzy. Doors lined both sides, each with tiny rectangular windows. Behind the glass, I saw glimpses of myself, one pacing, one crying, one smiling too wide, one sitting perfectly still, hands folded, staring at the door as if expecting me. Every version looked older than I remembered. My footsteps slowed as I approached the last door. The number on it wasn't a cell designation. It was a time, 333. I looked through the window. My heart slammed against my ribs. Inside the room, strapped to the chair, was me, gagged, eyes bloodshot, wrists bleeding from the restraints. He looked directly at me through the glass and shook his head violently, as if begging me not to come in. Then the door unlocked itself with a soft click. I stepped inside cautiously. The air was thick, heavy, static-filled. The other me strained against the restraints, throat gagged, breath rapid and ragged. His eyes were wild with desperation. I reached toward him, but he jerked away violently, shaking his head harder, tears streaming down his face. He wasn't afraid of me, he was afraid for me. A speaker crackled overhead. A familiar humming tone filled the room, 3.33 hertz. A low, droning vibration that seemed to resonate in my bones. My double's body arched in the chair, veins bulging in his neck as if the sound were physically pulling at him. The lights dimmed. Shadows pooled under the chair, rising like ink in water. The gag stretched, tearing slightly as he forced out a muffled, frantic warning. Don't look. I turned toward the mirror on the wall, even though he had begged me not to. It wasn't a mirror anymore. It was a window. And on the other side was 3021, watching me with a patient, almost fatherly expression. He lifted his hand and pressed it to the glass. The reflection of my hand did the same, but I didn't move. The version strapped to the chair began to convulse. The hum grew louder, drilling into the base of my skull. Then 3021 spoke calmly. He held the memory too long. You'll do better. The mirror cracked outward, the opposite of last time. The crack exploded across the glass in a spiderweb pattern. My heart raced as fragments fell like shimmering dust, each piece reflecting a different corridor of the prison. The hum deepened and the air vibrated. My double screamed behind the gag as the cracks expanded, peeling the mirror open like a wound. A shape began to push through. Not a person, not a shadow, a contour of something that matched my height, my outline, but distorted as if molded from static. It stepped forward, shedding glass as if it were crawling out of itself. The room dimmed. My double slumped in the chair, unconscious or dead, I couldn't tell. The thing took another step. The intercom crackled, synchronization at 90%. My vision blurred at the edges. I felt myself being pulled toward the shape, not physically, cognitively. Memory after memory flickered through my head. Childhood flashes, the fire in Chicago, the moment my mother died. Every buried shame, every mistake, every fracture in my mind, it knew them all. My chest tightened. The thing opened its mouth, but no sound came out. Instead, the room filled with my own voice, speaking from everywhere at once. We cannot leave until the missing one returns. I backed into the corner. I'm the missing one? No, the voice, my voice, answered. You're the original. Pain shot through my skull as memories I never lived flooded in. Sessions I never held, hallways I never walked, faces I never saw. Hundreds of versions of me, each one making a different choice, each one feeding this place with pieces of themselves. The shape lunged. I dove aside just as the fluorescent light shattered above us. Sparks rained down. The shape convulsed, glitching between forms, me at 16, me at 30, me burned, me bruised, me smiling, me hollow. I ran, out the door, down the distorted hallway, through the maze of impossible architecture. The sirens warped into a rhythmic chant, 3, 3, 3. Every corridor I turned down led me not toward the exit, but deeper into Redwood's impossible anatomy. Doors whispered as I passed them. Shadows followed but didn't chase, they guided. Finally, I burst into a massive open chamber that shouldn't exist in any structural blueprints. In the center stood a single observation chair, the same one from my original office. Straps, open, waiting. A screen flickered on above it, grainy footage. Me, walking into Redwood for the first time months ago. Except in the video, 3021 was already watching me from behind the glass, watching me like he'd been expecting this all along. A voice whispered behind me, "It only works if you sit down." I turned. 3021 stood in the doorway. Behind him, the shape, still growing, still learning me. And I realized, if it finished learning, there wouldn't be an original anymore. I stepped toward the chair. Every part of me screamed to run, but something stronger held me there. A gravitational pull, not from the room, but from within. A thread unraveling from the deepest part of my mind, pulling me to sit. 3021 didn't move. He just watched, like he always had, watching something being born in slow motion. I stood over the chair and stared down. The leather straps looked aged, used, as if others, versions of me, had been here before. I asked, "What happens if I sit?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped to the wall, and with a motion as smooth as breathing, he pressed a hidden panel. A soft hiss followed. The room dimmed, lights turning a pale orange, like sunset trapped behind iron. The walls rippled. I sat. The moment I did, the straps tightened on their own. No one touched them. I didn't resist. I knew I couldn't leave until I remembered something. Something I had buried long before Redwood. A projector on the ceiling hummed to life. The air smelled like dust and burnt paper. Footage played, grainy, black and white. It was a hospital hallway, narrow, empty. Then a girl appeared, blonde, pale, about 12. She walked slowly, dragging something behind her. As the camera panned, I saw what it was, a charred teddy bear. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that bear. I whispered, "No, not her." 3021 finally spoke. She was the first fracture, before the fire, before the mirror, before 333. The image faded. I screamed, but not out loud. Inside, where no one could hear. The projector flickered to another scene. My childhood bedroom. Early morning light leaking through torn blinds. A figure stood in the corner. My father. Except his face was wrong. Too long. Smiling too wide. Eyes pure black. He whispered, "You saw it first, didn't you?" I thrashed against the straps. The room wasn't just showing memories, it was recreating them. Rebuilding trauma I had buried, twisted through the lens of something else. The figure stepped closer to the screen, and the image bled into the walls. Suddenly, the room was the bedroom, the bed, the window, the corner. The figure now full-sized, breathing. I closed my eyes. "No," I whispered, "you're not real." It spoke in my father's voice, then mine, then the voice of 3021. "You thought Redwood would keep us out, but Redwood is us." A sharp snap. The left strap broke loose. I yanked my arm free and pulled at the other. The room pulsed with energy, shadows shifting faster than light. The final strap popped. I leapt from the chair. The figure lunged. I dove past it, slamming into the wall. But it wasn't a wall anymore. It cracked open like the mirror had, and I fell. Again. I hit metal, cold, wet, rusted. A hallway. One I recognized. The real Redwood, or what passed for it. Pipes leaked above me, buzzing lights overhead. I was back, but not at the entrance. Block E. Solitary. The place they swore was sealed. Only one light worked. A trail of faint, wet footprints led forward. I followed them, my heartbeat matching each step. The last cell at the end had no number. Its door was slightly open. Inside, a bed, a mirror, a chair, and a man, sitting, head down, breathing slow. I approached. The air buzzed with static. 3021? I asked. He didn't look up, but he spoke. They wanted your voice. They needed the original. Now they have it. What happens to me? I asked. He raised his head. It wasn't 3021 anymore. It was me, burned, hollow, eyes black as mirrors. You become the story. I tried to back away, but the door slammed shut. The mirror shimmered. I saw the prison. Then I saw a camera. Then a screen. Then you. You, watching, reading, hearing. I saw the shape of you on the other side of the mirror. You leaned forward, curious. You didn't know yet, did you, that stories don't stay where they begin? The mirror pulsed. Time slowed. I looked around, cell melting like wax, light dripping, reality bending. A voice filled the air. Not 3021, not mine, a composite. The voice of everyone who ever told the story. Each listener feeds the mirror. Each telling opens another door. And when enough doors are open, the cell vanished. Now I stood in an observation room. A man sat behind the glass, pale, confused. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. He leaned forward and pressed the recorder. Session begins. Patient ID 3021. He was watching me. I was watching him. We were both watching someone else. A monitor in the corner lit up. Time, 3:33 a.m. Recording, active. There was no redwood anymore. There never had been. Just a loop, a mirror of memories, a prison made of stories told too many times. And every telling pulled the teller closer to the glass. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. I was no longer a person. I was footage, a reflection, a memory inside someone else's version. The lights dimmed. The session ended. I faded. The last thing I heard before everything went black was a new voice, a new therapist, starting over. You're inmate 3021, correct? A slow breath, a pause. Then my voice answered, yes, but it wasn't me anymore. And the mirror was hungry again. I sat in the chair again. I don't remember choosing to. I only remember the feeling that this had happened before. The room, the straps, the lights, the voice through the intercom, it all played like a scene from a movie I'd seen too many times. But this time, I wasn't resisting. The mirror in front of me wasn't showing a reflection anymore. It showed a corridor with endless doors, and each door bore my name. Different variations, different versions, places I'd never lived, dates I'd never been born. One door opened on its own. Behind it, a child sat at a desk, drawing in red crayon. I recognized him. Me, age 6, drawing the prison walls. I had drawn them before I ever saw them. Another door opened. Me, older, screaming in a padded room, carving 333 into my forearm. Another door. Me standing at a funeral. No casket, just a mirror. The image warped and began pulling me again, not physically, but ontologically, like my idea of self was unraveling thread by thread. I could feel the weight of each lie I told myself, trying to escape this fate, and the room was feeding on it. One final door appeared, just a number, session number 1, and a voice behind me whispered, "Say your name." I didn't speak. I couldn't. The name I wanted to say didn't belong to me anymore. I had worn too many masks, lived too many lives within this mirror. Saying a name now would only assign it to the next version. The door marked session number 1 opened. Inside was an observation room. A man in a white coat, clipboard, pen, a camera pointed at the chair where I sat. But I wasn't in the chair. I was behind the glass, watching. Except the man wasn't me this time. It was someone else. And he leaned into the mic and said, 3021, are you ready to begin? The figure in the chair nodded once, slowly. I leaned forward, heart pounding. The camera view zoomed slightly. The patient in the chair lifted his head. It was me. It was always me. The therapist continued. What do you remember? I opened my mouth to answer. The lights flickered. 3033 on the screen. The mirror behind the patient began to crack. This was the final loop. I knew it. I could feel the system closing. Redwood was never a location. It was a construct, a containment system for a memory too unstable to live in one mind. They didn't bury the horror. They distributed it across time, across selves. I screamed into the glass. The therapist didn't hear me. He was fading too. His form pulsed like static, then vanished in pixels. The room darkened. I stood alone between both worlds. Behind me, the chair. Ahead of me, the mirror. The floor began to tilt again. The hum returned, louder than ever. I reached toward the mirror for the final time, and this time, it reached back. A hand. Not mine, not his, not human, but familiar. I took it. There was no scream, no pain, just quiet. I found myself in a small room, white walls, no doors, no windows. Just a screen in the center playing a video on loop. I walked closer. It was my story. This story, the one you've been reading. You, the observer, the listener, the witness. I reached to touch the screen and it flashed a message. Thank you for completing the integration. Beneath it, please assign designation for future playback. A cursor blinked, waiting for input. I typed 3022. You've made it to the end. Or maybe this is your beginning. You're the next observer, the next eye behind the glass. Maybe tonight you'll hear it too. 333, that hum in the walls. Maybe a mirror in your home will crack just slightly. Maybe someone will whisper your name in your own voice. Maybe you'll forget reading this, but it won't forget you. After all, stories don't end. They multiply, and someone always has to sit in the chair.